Joins us live from Mandaluyong to tell us more about this. So Greg, how many vaccine doses have been shipped to the Philippines since Sunday?
Charles, over 1.24 million COVID-19 vaccines have arrived in the country. 249,600 of them are Moderna vaccines that arrived on Sunday, while the rest are Sinovac shots which arrived today. 150,000 doses of the Moderna vaccines are procured by the Philippine government, while the remaining shots have been bought by the private sector led by the International Container Terminal Services Incorporated, or ICTSI. This is the first batch of Moderna vaccines that the country has received. Vaccine Czar Carlito Galvez said a total of 20 million doses of Moderna vaccines are expected to arrive in the country this year. In the Philippines back in, plus Galvez said these doses will be deployed first in the National Capital Region to study the deployment measures for this vaccine. Meanwhile, another 1 million doses of Sinovac vaccines have arrived earlier today. To date, the Philippines have already acquired 12 million doses of China-made jabs. But Senator from Sinovac's efficacy against the Delta variant, it is still effective. Galvez added, Sinovac is being used in 28 countries and our steady supply comes from Sinovac, among other procurements. Charles, Galvez and Duque also assured that the government is looking into the viral video showing a vaccine shot remaining in the syringe despite being supposedly injected to the recipient. Officials said they will not tolerate such action and added that penalties may be imposed to the vaccinator. Charles?
Thanks for that, Greg. That was Greg Gregorio reporting live from Mandaluyong. Organization believes that the global community is failing in its battle against the coronavirus disease. This as poor countries continue to suffer and remain in lockdown due to the lack of COVID-19 vaccines. Let's listen in.
The world, as international community, as the world is failing. As global community, we're failing. We're repeating the same mistake as HIV/AIDS, which took 10 years to reach the low-income countries after it was already rampant in high-income countries, and the H1N1 vaccines that was delivered to low-income countries after the pandemic, after the epidemic was over. Do we want to repeat the same thing? Can't we learn from what happened in the past? The whole world is sick and tired of lockdowns. You can see it from how the citizens of the high-income countries are behaving now. They're so happy. It's opened up. Restaurants are full. The streets are full. Everywhere you go, you see crowds as if there is no pandemic. Then you go to countries where there is no vaccine access, still lockdowns. The problem now is supply problem. Just give us the vaccines. You know, some people were asking me about vaccine hesitancy in Africa. And then I say, that's not the problem. There is no vaccine, so why do we even talk about vaccine hesitancy? The problem is vaccine supply. And even now, it's not the absorptive or the delivery problem that's a problem. There is no vaccine. You can't even talk about delivery or absorption capacity when there is no vaccine. As we have said, new variants are expected and will continue to be reported. That's what viruses do. They evolve. But we can prevent the emergence of variants by preventing transmission. It's quite simple. More transmission, more variants. Less transmission, less variants.
Despite the global vaccine rollout, some countries are imposing new restrictions to counter the recent surges in COVID-19 infections. South Africa will tighten COVID-19 restrictions for 14 days, as current containment measures are insufficient to cope with the speed and scale of new infections. The country is in the grip of a third wave of infections and is the worst hit on the African continent in terms of recorded cases and deaths. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said additional restrictions are necessary as cases climb due to the spread of the more infectious Delta variant. Thailand announced new restrictions centered around its capital, Bangkok, in a bid to tackle the country's worst COVID-19 outbreak. Local media says that new measures include a ban on restaurant dine-ins in Bangkok and 5 surrounding provinces. Shopping malls in Bangkok and the 5 provinces must be closed by 9 p.m. and social gatherings of more than 20 people will be banned. Construction sites will also be shut down as 37 clusters were reported in Bangkok camp since May. And over in Australia, Sydney began a 2-week lockdown over the weekend as a cluster of Delta variant cases in the city rose to 110. However, the lockdown did not seem to stop locals from hitting the streets and beaches. A local resident tells Reuters that people are still going out of their homes despite the 2-week quarantine, as locals are more mentally prepared for this lockdown compared to the previous one. The PNP is eyeing to conduct psychiatric exams for all cops after an MPD policeman went on a shooting rampage over the weekend. The suspect killed one of his co-officers and wounded another. Here's the report.
These personnel from the Manila Police Force rushed out of their offices late Saturday night after one of their co-officers went on a shooting rampage right at the Manila Police District headquarters. The MPD were trying to respond to its wounded personnel who were shot by one of their own, identified as Police Executive Master Sergeant Reynante Di Pasupil. Reports say Di Pasupil was drunk when he arrived at the headquarters that evening and forcibly opened the door to the office even though he was stopped by the desk officer. Di Pasupil then grabbed an M16 Armalite and rifle and started firing the gun from outside the office of MPD's Drug Enforcement Unit. This is when Di Pasupil hit his first victim, Reynaldo Cordova. But the scuffle did not end there. Di Pasupil headed straight to the second door of the MPD to target the office of the district director, Leo Francisco. 3 officers manning the office exchanged fires with the suspect. Di Pasupil eventually ran out of ammo and fled toward the back exit of the headquarters. But he was blocked by Police Master Sergeant Romeo Cantal, who then tried to subdue him. Di Pasupil, however, decided to fire more shots using his service firearms, hitting Cantal, now his second victim. At this point, another police officer was able to get a clear shot on the suspect. After the scuffle, Di Pasupil and his 2 victims were rushed to the hospital. But both Cantal and Di Pasupil lost their lives and only Cordova was able to survive. Because of the incident, the entire MPD was placed under full alert status. Meanwhile, the family of police officer Cantal is still in disbelief that the officer died in the hands of a fellow policeman. Cantal has been serving the police force for 24 years and was formerly a member of SAF or the Special Action Force.
Siyempre, sir, na-shock ako. Parang nabigla kami. Ganun nga nangyari, napaaga siya.
PNP Chief Guillermo Eleazar has now ordered a probe into the incident. He also wants to look into possible mental health issues that potentially drove the suspect to go on a shooting rampage. The PNP Health Service is also set to recommend the conduct of psychiatric psychosocial exams for all personnel.
Kasama sa tutukuyin ng investigasyong ito ay ang ibang aspeto ng pamamaril ni Police Executive Master Sergeant Reynante Di Pasupil, kabilang issue ng mental health. This recent incident at MPD, along with the previous ones, highlights the need for us to closely look into the overall state of our men.
District Director Leo Francisco, meanwhile, considers himself lucky that he was not at his office when the rampage took place.
Una, pumasok siya sa Office of the Director. Kaya lang may mga naka-duty ako doon. So ang ginawa niya, binaril niya yung salamin ng Office of the Director. So wala naman ako kanina.
A News 5 source said Di Pasupil's main target may have actually been Francisco. Francisco supposedly suspended Di Pasupil after the suspect protested against the system of collecting funds for the district director's office. Francisco also allegedly went hiding inside his office when the shooting rampage began. The MPD, however, denied the claim, saying Di Pasupil was never suspended and there was no issue over money between the 2 personnel.
Wala pong ganong katotohanan at Sabi nga po ng aming district director, hindi niya personal nakakilala yung tao at yung balita po na kaya daw po siya nagalit ay nirelieve siya ng ating district director. Wala pong ganong pangyayari at wala pong kayo makikita na mayroon siyang relief order.
MPD adds there's also no truth to the claim that Francisco was hiding inside his office when the Pasupil was trading shots with other officers outside.
Hindi po totoo yun. Ang district director po natin ay nandun mismo sa loob po ng Manila Police District Headquarters na sa kwarto niya po at nagpapahinga po.
The Pasupil has been a part of the police force for 20 years. His wife is also a police officer. The Pasupil's family refused to give a statement to the media.
Manny Pacquiao's upcoming fight against Errol Spence Jr. now hangs in limbo. This as Paradigm Sports filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the People's Champ due to breach of contract. Paradigm Sports claims that it had exclusive rights to negotiate Pacquiao's next two fights. But the bout with Spence was supposedly brokered behind the firm's back. The management company also claims that Pac-Man's associates undermined their exclusive partnership and worked on boxing deals outside of their contract. However, Pacquiao's camp dismissed Paradigm's lawsuit as a, quote, frivolous effort to interfere with the upcoming mega fight. Recall that Pacquiao made news last year when he announced his signing with Paradigm as its first major boxer. And those are the top stories at this hour. Join us again later at 12 noon as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.